All right. Hello and welcome, Just a Family. This is giving you something to talk about, or Just a Live TV, as I like to call it. My name is Melissa. I'm an identity coach, spiritual teacher, business mentor, creator, and founder of not only Just a Live TV, but also the Women Supporting Women Can Network. So today's episode is sponsored by Phoenix Identity. If you are feeling desperate to unlock your potential, to figure out who you are as an individual and how you can be the best leader that you possibly can, go and check them out. They have clarity sessions available for you, link in the description. All right, so today we are talking about what it means to be a leader. So I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker today, Thomas, to introduce himself. Would you like to do the honors?
Yes, please. Thank you, Melissa. I'm Thomas Cox. I created a business called Becoming a Best Boss. And I did that because after 15 years in technology, I discovered that the quality of projects, the quality of everybody's life kept varying based on who we were working for, or who was the team lead, or how well we were being managed. And of course, you got a bunch of engineers, and I don't know if you know any engineers, but none of us had any people skills. And we'd be unhappy, we wouldn't know why. Or we'd be happy, but we still wouldn't know why. And after I kind of topped out, after 15 years of that, doing database technology work, I thought, man, if I could just crack the code on that, I'd be happier and I could make people around me happier. And boy, it seems like an unmet need to figure out how do you get teams to be happy and productive. And it really does seem to hinge off, the qualities of the leader. And so that was in 2002. So I spent the last 20 years trying to puzzle that out. It's been quite the journey, and I can boil it down to a couple of things. So let's say you were called for jury duty. This happened to me. And let's say you take it into your head that you'd like to be the foreperson of the jury, because of course the jury has to select somebody to be, unless the judge appoints someone. How would you go about doing that? And that happened to me. And I thought, I'm going to test out my theories here by seeing if I can get 11 strangers to pick me as the foreman. And so what I set about doing is we're all gathering and we're all awkward strangers, and, no one knows what to do. And we're in this, small room. And so I just start at my left, I go clockwise around, and I just say, "Hi, I'm Thomas. What are you hoping to get out of your jury service? What's your name? Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah." And then, what would make this a good experience for you? What's important to you? And I just ask, and after a while, it's obvious that I'm asking these questions. I'm focused on one person. I'm not like putting on a show. But after a while, everyone's like waiting their turn. And it's the only structure in the room. No one else is doing anything structured other than maybe a little bit of chat. I ask all 11 people. I'm taking notes because I can't remember any of this stuff. But I'm just curious. I'm interested. Like, what would make you happy being on this jury? What are you looking to accomplish? What are your goals? What are your desires? What's in you? And just making conversation, not like I'm in charge. I'm not like acting, all pompous or anything. And at the end of it, so somebody says, "Yeah, we're supposed to pick a foreman, and who'd like to be?" And I said, "I'd be willing to if folks want me." And then the other guy said, "Well, I'd be happy to," because he's, views himself as the leader type. And he was crushed, right? I mean, I got all the votes. Why? Because I acted like someone who cared about, I behaved as I did. It was not enough to care. Okay. Caring's internal. I behaved in a way that shows care, that other people matter to me. I care how they're feeling, what's important to them. I want to know them as unique individuals. And I gave them my undivided attention as I was listening to them. And this is half of the recipe of becoming the kind of person people want to follow, is that you have to show up. Please don't fake this, by the way. I'm not saying you can't fake it. I'm saying don't fake it, because if people find out you're faking it, you will lose.
Not a good idea.
You'll go from high. You'll create a crater in equal distance to whatever fake high you created. They will feel betrayed by you because they have been. So you have to really develop an actual genuine interest in other human beings, which, as an engineer, I actually had to work on. There's a whole training I put myself through to figure out, how do I find people interesting? Because I was all fascinated with objects and technology and whatnot. So that's part of the transformation. And so this is half the game. Half the recipe is you figure out how to demonstrate the genuine interest in others. And that was enough to get me elected foreman. But if this were something, or if you wanted to be more than that, if you had an actual team that actually had to perform over time, not just a one-day trial, you'd need to do the other half of the leadership mystery. The first half is taking a genuine interest in others and caring about them as human beings. The second is championing high standards of excellence and calling people up to that, because we all want to achieve, and we want to see ourselves as having won. We love progress towards a worthy goal. We love it. It releases more dopamine and gives us a greater sense of fulfillment than anything else. Not the achievement of the goal, but the progress towards the goal. And if you can rally the group around some kind of shared goal, and then maintain a high standard and challenge people when they fall short, and if someone's hurting team dynamics, you get in their face. You don't let it linger. You challenge bad behavior. You acknowledge excellence. You help them acknowledge each other. There's actually 5 behaviors of relating to build that relationship, and there's 7 behaviors of requiring to demand and uphold excellence. And if you can do those things consistently, people will follow you regardless of your title. And that's what I teach, what I practice. And it's been nothing short of revolutionary. And one of the things that's bothered me, by the way, when this topic of leadership comes up, is I seem to have found myself in an industry, the leadership training industry, that is so full of charlatans and snake oil, so full of bad advice and messy thinking and mistaken ideas, that it's a little hard to break through. Fortunately, my stuff works and theirs doesn't. So I get a lot of repeat business and a lot of word of mouth.
I can't wait.
but I mean, it's a very simple recipe. I'd say I want to back up. There's some pre-work you have to do if you really want to carry out this becoming the kind of leader that people love following and feel deeply fulfilled in their following of you. You got to work on yourself. And one of the most important things you can do is become a calm, relaxed, confident human being who doesn't get triggered, that doesn't fly off the handle, that doesn't fly into a rage, that doesn't have uncontrolled emotions. I'm not saying you have to be unemotional. I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel feelings. That would be bad, right? I mean, you've got to have empathy, and you've got to, feel appropriate anger at the right things at the right time. Let me read 5 things to you and say, if a leader did these 5 things, how would you feel? A leader that shows empathy, one that has curiosity, one that shows creativity and passion and purpose. Okay, hold those 5 things in your thoughts. If you had a person who wanted to lead you and they showed up with empathy, curiosity, creativity, passion, and purpose, and they were in control of their emotions weren't in control of them, they were, fully fledged human beings, and you would think, wow, yeah, I'd be all for that, as opposed to like full of negative judgment and either criticizing you or criticizing our circumstances are terrible, negative Nelly, or self-criticism. Those are all 3 so unpleasant to be around over time. And so this self-work I'm talking about comes from an outstanding book that I recommend to all my clients now, called Positive Intelligence. If you've never heard of it, it's beginning to get some serious traction in the world. And what positive intelligence teaches you is how to move the activity out of the negative judgmental part of your brain that gets you triggered and keeps you triggered and helps you trigger others, and over into parts of the right brain and the positive limbic system and the mirror neurons that trigger empathy. And it helps you deliberately shift the activity in your own brain so that you show up in this empathic, passionate, curious, creative way. And it's like catnip. People love it. And so that to me is a precursor for the work that I'm talking about doing, learning these skills of leading.
I have a PDF, and I'll actually link it to this episode. It's called Embrace Your Positivity, and it does very similar things. We do, as
Exactly.
individuals, need to know how to understand what our triggers are, why they're
Yes.
triggers, and be able to control them, because a reaction is an emotional reaction to a trigger. A
Yeah.
response is a logical thought process that you use to react, to respond to somebody,
Right.
right? Or a situation or event. It's absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we won't get triggered by life. We will,
Oh, for
but when
sure.
you can recover quickly, when you notice the inner saboteurs coming out to start, doing their
Mm-hmm.
judgy stuff, you can go, oh, I'm falling into, you know, I'm becoming hypercritical, or I'm becoming hyperachieving, or I'm becoming, I don't like my reality and I want to distract myself. Both like I'm going to go Facebook for a few hours. Any of those ways you sabotage yourself, learning to intercept that, redirect yourself back into what in that excellent book, Positive Intelligence, is referred to as the sage part of your brain. You become, it's like, when you can redirect yourself back there quickly, people notice and they really want to be around you. And so that to me is a precursor. And then building strong relationships and figuring out how to require excellence. That's the trick. Now it takes time, and there's some practices you have to engage in. So let me give you some more examples. I said that there's 5 behaviors of relating. I'll list them for you. It's asking questions, being curious, what people think, input ideas, listening actively and deeply to the other person, not just at the intellectual, but also at the emotional level, being fully present, including people in important decisions, making sure folks' ideas and circumstances are considered. Hey, Fred, this is going to impact you. They're making the decision over there, but I know you're affected, so I want to make sure that your concerns are heard. Asking, listening, including coaching is number 4, which is helping people find their own strengths as opposed to you showing up with answers for them. Don't rescue people if you don't have to. I mean, if they might be, the second-rate answer that comes from them is better than the first-rate answer you hand them on a platter. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it works. Live with it. Once you accept that, you'll be a better leader. So coach others to find their own strengths. Go ahead.
I gently guide them, right? Like
right.
When I gently guide them, it's a question. It's, hey, have you ever thought of this?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you plant that little seed, all of a sudden they start thinking, and then it expands, right?
And, and they find in themselves the thing that resonates with what you said, but then the idea and the action flows from them, and they've got commitment energy, not compliance.
It has
energy,
to be individualistic. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned 5, right? Asking, listening, including coaching. Last is encouraging, which is bringing positive energy to conversations, helping people feel psychologically safe, finding their own courage, finding their own confidence, reminding them of their past successes, their past victories, the fact that, hey, you knocked it out of the park last month, you can do it again. Yeah. So that's relating. Then there comes requiring, right? You can't just do, like, the relators are all like, yeah, I can do all that. I'm already doing all that. That's only half of it. If you're a natural relator, you're going to have to learn to require. If you're a natural requirer, you're going to have to learn to relate, because as humans, we need both to feel well led and to want to follow a really excellent boss. By the way, most of what I'm talking about here comes from an outstanding book called The 2R Manager by Pete Friedis. I'll send you a link. Absolutely. I've built a lot of stuff on top of it, like how do you set up the weekly meeting that gives you the opportunity to build the relationship? Because just because you intend to do these 5 behaviors doesn't mean they're going to happen unless you create the opportunity. So it's good to have the skill, but you also have to have the rituals and routines. Absolutely. I can get onto that in a second, but everyone's like, but what about requiring? What about requiring? So let me talk about requiring. You've got to set common expectations. And it's great if you can come from the team. It doesn't all have to come out of your head or out from management. It doesn't all have to be top down, but there's got to be a common shared expectation of what is excellence. Now, one of my favorite examples of this is you ask anybody. I did this with my hair cutter last week. First time I worked with her, I said, you've been doing this for a while, 28 years, she said. In your experience, what does it mean to be excellent at what you do? And I just shut up for the next half hour while she cut my hair and talked about what was excellence. And she liked that question. She had opinions about what was excellence for her. I was coaching a young lady who very high potential young executive to be in city government. And you knew she was a high potential because the senior executives kept giving her all of their hard problems. It's like they had a group of, I think it was like 11 receptionists all across this government body, and they didn't have a boss. And everyone's got to have a boss. You got to have someone who's your manager who's like there for you. And so they said, okay, you're going to manage them in addition to the rest of your mismatched portfolio of lost toys that they'd given her. And she's like, I don't know anything about reception. I said, you don't have to. They know. Ask them on your. Have you had a staff meeting? No, we've never had a staff meeting. Have a staff meeting. They need to see each other. They need to see you. And on the agenda, ask this question and then shut up. What does it mean to be excellent as a receptionist? And she's like, well, okay. She wanted to give like 5 or 10 minutes on the agenda. Half an hour later, they were just getting warmed up. And she had to call it for time and continue the conversation for the next staff meeting. But they loved that question. Now, they were all over the map on it. They didn't have consensus yet. But they will tell you, ask people this question, what does it mean to be excellent as a street sweeper there, Johnny? Or, hey, Chris, you've been doing this welding longer than I have by a lot. What does it mean to be excellent? And they will tell you what standard they want to be held to, that they want to hold each other to, that they aspire to. And then you can come back to them, and all you're doing as a manager sometimes is just directing people's attention, because the world is huge and complex and we have to focus on one thing at a time. You can say, when Chris says, excellence is this, and you see Randy doing the opposite, you could say, Randy, is that heading in the direction of excellence or away from it? Just, and in a way you're asking a question, but in a way you're also directing Randy's attention, and you're calling back to this team conversation last week about what is excellence. It's like, oh, hey, dude, you know more about welding than I do. And did we just talk about this? And so you're already okay, there's some tension there because all requiring involves tension, but it's the tension between where the person is and where they could be, right? It's the unrealized potential in all of us. And deep down, we want someone to call us up to a higher level. That's why we love the boss that relates to us as a human being and requires of us and doesn't let us rest in a hammock of comfort, but calls us to the challenge and says, hey, we have a goal and we're going to make progress on it. So creating common expectations, huge part of the requiring side of being a good boss. Insisting on excellence, focusing on goals. One of my favorites and one of the hardest ones is called creating appropriate controls. Now, that's something you don't get a lot of. Most people don't know what that means. So I should probably illustrate. If you want to create controls, then, one person will, run the cash register, and then a different person will double check the count of cash at the end of the day. Or one person will pay the bills and a different person accounts for the money, because if the same person's doing both, you're inviting potential misbehavior, and you're also preventing errors from being caught, because the same person who didn't catch it the first time, if they proofread their own work very well, won't catch it the second time either. Second pair of eyes is very important. There's a trick here. When you assign work, always assign the reporting of the work with the work. Let me explain what that means. Like, if you tell Fred, hey, I need you to buy a book because we're going to study it, and he says, okay, I bought the book, but you don't actually know if he bought the book or not. He just said he did. And sometimes people will say, yeah, I meant to, or I'm about to, but I don't want to seem like I'm behind schedule. So I'll tell you I bought it, but in fact, I'm going to get to it. And no, if you invite people to stretch the truth a little, and then you get misled, that's on you. You can't leave people room to stretch the truth. So one of my favorite management gurus, Mark Horstman, who came up through West Point and served in the Army, and learned about accountability and feedback loops and cross-checking in a very rigorous school there, says you don't assign buy a book. The assignment is buy the book and send me a photo of the book on your desk. That's the assignment. Is you get it and you send me the photo. Both. That's one assignment. And you can't send me the photo without the book. And so, right, we're not done until I get the photo. Now, how hard is it? I'm not saying write a book report. That'd be a separate assignment, but like show me the evidence. And when you get into that mindset of that, I'm not going to tell you to do a thing. I'm going to tell you to do the thing and show your work, or do the thing and tell me it's done. I think every workplace has stories of you expect someone to do something and they never tell you if they did it or not. So you're sitting around waiting to find out if it's done so you can take your step. And meanwhile, they did it and went home, but never told you. And you're sitting there like, when's it going to get done? Oh, it was done yesterday. It's like, but you didn't tell me. It's like, well, you didn't tell me to tell you. You told me to do it. Stop.
Accountability.
Stop.
Right?
Just
putting boundaries in place and holding people accountable.
Right. And figuring out where do things go off the rails and put in rails so that things get cross-checked so we can't drift away from quality. And by the way, following up is part of accountability. I actually have a whole training unit called the accountability loop, which reveals the hidden structure of accountability. Maybe we should talk about that sometime. Actual accountability is a 4-step process, and we do it all the time. It's the basic building block of teamwork, is asking for help and getting it.
I've put accountability into my SMARTER method because it's an acronym. So the A, of course, is accountability, because we each, as a leader, as anybody, as an individual, we need to have accountability for our actions,
yeah,
for words.
You can't be a good teammate without accountability.
No. So you had mentioned a couple things at the beginning of the video that I wanted to touch on, and one of them was good managers. I had a manager, the owner operator of a business that I was working for many years ago. He was a leader, and he would have been an amazing leader, but he was, what's the word I'm looking for? I ended up taking him to the labor board because he fired me because I wouldn't do work that I wasn't hired or qualified to do. And he always had these trainings, these ideas. He's like, a good manager shows you how it's done. And I'm just like, I liked that part, right? And I really respected him at first. And I liked the part where, a good manager or a good leader is somebody who's not just going to tell you how to do it, they're going to show you how to do it. They're going to, engage with you on how to do it. They're going to, show you that they know what they're talking about without, right?
They have competence.
They have the competence, right? Another thing that you had mentioned that I wanted to touch on was even coaches. You talked about snakes, right? Every one of my clients, since I began coaching, every one of my clients that I have connected with and that we've had actual transformation with, I follow up with them.
Yes.
Right? Even after the payments stop, I follow up with them. I can't tell you how many individuals I've worked with that just throw you off the radar. As soon as you're done, you're non-existent.
Yeah.
That's not a leader. Right. And I'm not saying that you don't fall through the cracks. I'm not saying that, every leader, I own 6 businesses. I can't be all the time talking to absolutely everyone.
Right.
But I'm also
staying in touch.
Throw you aside.
Right. Yeah. Like, it might be 3 months later, but I'm going to send you a voicemail or an email or some kind of text outreach, something, and say, hey, Melissa, it's been 3 months. I'm just thinking about you. How you doing? Hope you're well. My wife and I just did this thing, which reminded me of you. Whatever
it looks like, right?
And by the way, that's part of maintaining an excellent network, which is part of the package here. Because if you're going to be effective as a leader, you better have a really good professional network.
Yeah, exactly. So now being a leader for me comes down to, like you said, empathy, right? And one of the most popular things in coaching today is knowing your why. Right? Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of us that want to make money. We want to be able to support our family.
It's a very legitimate goal.
Right? Yeah. Very, very legitimate goal. But that's not the why.
No.
right? And I think that when you ask people what their version, and I'm going to challenge everybody who watches or listens to this episode, I'm going to challenge you two things. Number one, what is excellence? I want to throw Thomas's question out there because I do absolutely love that question. Whatever it is that you do, or whatever profession that you're in, whether you're a 9-to-5er, whether you're corporate, whether you're a CEO or an entrepreneur, doesn't matter. What is your idea of excellence? Post it in the comments, send us a message, reach out. What is your excellence?
Shorter is better.
Yeah.
Shorter is better, but not like so short it's cryptic and we can't understand it, but not like 8 paragraphs of detail. There's an essence there.
Yep. Yeah. Hashtag just alive essence or excellence, not essence. See, you got me tripping up on that one.
Hashtag excellence.
And then the second part is, and I totally forgot the second part.
It'll come to you.
It will. It usually does.
Well, let's see. We just talked about the importance of staying in touch with people over time. I would say if you want to start upping your leadership game right now, work on the self-improvement, the ability to control your own inner saboteurs. Again, the book Positive Intelligence might be a very good start.
Or my smarter method.
Or your smarter method. Absolutely. Yeah. Melissa's smarter method. Definitely look into that. And start paying full, complete attention to people when you're speaking with them. Really listen deeply. Track what they tell you. People are remarkably self-revealing. If someone mentions that, their daughter is going to have a ballet recital this weekend, the next week, follow up and ask how the ballet recital went. It may not matter to you, but it matters to them. And when you let what matters to them matter to you at least a little bit, you're showing them that you're making space inside of you for them. You have a little mental model of them that's important to you that you keep up to date. I asked somebody once, it'd be like a year since I talked to him, and says, I remember last year you were struggling with something and I described it. It's like, whatever happened with that? And it hadn't gone terribly well, but he was delighted that I'd remembered that I had shown that I cared enough to track that. And you can only track about 150 people maximum, and really a much smaller inner circle, maybe 5 really close friends and maybe a few dozen intermediates, and then the rest are more acquaintances. And above 150, our brains just lose capacity. That's called the Dunbar number, by the way. And when you show people either that they're at least in your 150, or maybe they're in that smaller inner circle of 20 or 30 that they track closely, the only way to show that is by showing that you're tracking the details of their lives by paying attention to them and noticing things. I'll give you one last trick. If you ever need to give somebody performance feedback, no one does this correctly, by the way. Hardly anyone. Is do not tell them your opinion of what they've done. Do not give them like, that was awesome. That's useless input. You want to describe the specific behavior they engaged in and the impact that behavior had, both short-term and long-term. Now, this is tricky. So you're watching, Chris is sweeping the floor. And there's a technique for sweeping the floor, and Chris has been taught the technique, and Chris is using the technique that Chris was taught. All right. Hey, Chris, you got a second? That's how you get permission to talk. Hey, can I get your attention for a second? I noticed that you're using that sweeping technique from the workshop. And when you do that, it tells me that you're paying attention in class. I can see that you're doing a better, cleaner job of sweeping because the technique does work. And I think you're setting a really good example for the rest of the staff of paying attention and really focusing on your technique and doing it the best you can. Keep it up, man. And so the impact is emotional. It tells me this thing. The impact is physical in the world. You're making it cleaner, and you're setting an example for others. So there's a social impact. That's 3 impacts. And then I made a request. Keep it up. So you describe the behavior in physical detail, like a camera would pick up. You describe one or more impacts, and you make a request. And that's actual performance feedback. What most people call feedback is just opinionating at somebody. has zero or sometimes negative impact on performance. The kind of feedback I just described, which you can look at, it's described in excellent detail at a website called managertools.com, manager-tools.com, outstanding resource. Look for their feedback info. My model's slightly different from theirs, but theirs is absolutely rock solid. That's the kind of performance feedback that drives improvement and focuses on excellence. So I guess if I wanted to wrap up, I'd say build strong relationships by behaving in ways that show you care about the other person and really do care. Uphold high standards of excellence through setting expectations, focusing on goals, asking about excellence, holding people to it, challenging subpar performance. Dude, this is a mess. Do it again. This is not excellent. You know better. I know you do. Last week you did great. Now you're not doing great. Is there something wrong? Do you need help? No, you're just slacking off. Okay, wake up. By the way, there's two ways to challenge people. There's the sleepy ones who kind of need to be pushed to wake up to do a good job. I can be that way sometimes. You might need to get your head out of your orifice, Cox. Come on. Or then there's the nervous ones who are pushing themselves hard, and there's negative self-talk, and you need to calm them down so they can perform better because they're freaking themselves out. And you need to know which one to do, and that's going to vary by the individual. So don't think you should go around kicking everybody's butt. About half of us need to have our butts kicked, and the other half need to have our feathers smoothed down. And you will get, and that's your job as a boss, is to help each person maximize their individual performance and to help the team get along as a team. When you do that, you're an outstanding boss. People will love you. You'll get promoted. You'll get buckets of money. People will think of you as the best boss they ever had.
Yeah. So for everybody watching or listening, what do you classify leadership? What do you think leadership means to you? If you're following somebody, if you want to be a leader, what does that look like for you? We're going to ask that excellence. What does an excellent leader look like to you? And put it in the comments. Let us know. Send us a message. That is, what it means to be a good leader is somebody who actually cares, somebody who has empathy, somebody who understands, who knows what they're talking about. And being a good leader is somebody who's genuinely themselves. And I think that we need to differentiate between influencers and leaders. Leaders are their own individuals. They are people who, aren't just following the crowd. They're genuine. And I think that the authenticity of a genuine leader is unmatched.
I'm not going to dispute that.
Didn't think so.
In fact, if folks want to answer this question in the comments, it touches on yours. Think of the best boss you ever had. And what's one thing they did that your second best boss didn't do? That's not all of excellence, but it's one data point. And those data points will add up. So I'd be very curious what people have to say about that. Think of your best boss ever. Maybe you can say their first name or their initials. And what did they do that makes them stand out in your memory as the best boss you ever had?
Mine, I felt valued. It was a genuine connection where I felt valued.
Do you remember what they did that helped you feel that way?
They cared about my life, what was going on. If I was going through a stressful time or something was going on, it was, hey, Melissa, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Can we work around this? And it was just that ability to shift it and say, okay, yes, this is going on. It's horrible. How can we still do stuff and respect where you're at, kind of thing.
Right. And they wouldn't lower the bar. They didn't say, well, take a week off. Oh, or your work doesn't matter because you're feeling sad. It was like, how do we maintain excellence and acknowledge the fact that you're struggling and you might need a hand or a break or flexibility or something. It's both and, not either or.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Thomas. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right. Well, just a family, that is the episode. If you'd like to get a hold of myself or Thomas, you can do so. Our links are in the description of this episode. Go and check us out. Connect with Thomas. Our sponsor today, a Phoenix Identity. Go and check them out. I will link the Embrace Your Positivity Guide in that as well. Go and take a clarity session if you want to learn how to be the best version of yourself. Soon we will be launching the Smarter Method book and the program that goes with it. And it's how to be a happy, healthy individual. And it's amazing. I can't wait for this book to come out. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Thomas. I really appreciated it.
Hey, thank you. Take care.
All right. Like, follow, and share the show. Join our newsletter at justalivetv.com. If you would like to be a guest speaker, or if you would like a topic featured on the show, please make sure that you reach out. Justalivetv.com. Our inbox is always open. Bye.